interesting numbers certainly that came from the salary survey, and not to bamboozle people with numbers this morning, because I know there's a lot of numbers being thrown at people, but 4 numbers just to let you take away from this morning. Those numbers, I have them written down here: 85, 89, 73 and 46, if you remember those numbers. 85 is the percentage of employers, the amount of you who've said that you're going to hire in this coming year. 89% is the number of employers that are saying they're going to increase wages. 73% is the number of employees that expect to get a pay increase this year. So you can see there's a match there between the number of employees that expect to get a pay increase and employers that are expecting to pay their employees more. For me though, probably the single biggest number, and there's a lot of numbers in that salary survey, was the number 46. And 46% of candidate respondents to the salary survey have said that they are going to look at changing job in 2018. With all these increased expectations in terms of wage demands from an employee perspective, particularly in low margin businesses, it's certainly going to erode profitability. So I just wanted to share those as some of the highlights from the salary survey with people.
What we think makes this salary survey a little bit different to the others is we try to bring a little bit perhaps of more in-depth research, both to the question framing and to some of the results. Our colleagues in human resource management, including Professor Na Fu, are working to mine into the data and to try and bring some academic thoughts out of it.
To put it bluntly, no advanced economy has engaged in an act of economic self-harm on the level of Brexit. And we've got new senior management in Britain. So when that's your foreign minister, you know you're in trouble. So what does it mean in money terms? Well, the sector that's going to be damaged the most is one which has a significant amount of employment intensity, and that's agriculture. So when you go into Dunn's and you buy your cheddar cheese, well, there's a strange problem. The only other people that like cheddar other than the Irish are the English. And we sell a lot of it to England. In fact, we sell the majority of our cheddar to England. In addition to that, when we have these trade deals, if the EU has no trade deal with the UK, Ireland has no trade deal with the UK. The estimate by the European Parliament is that a hard Brexit could result in a 9.4% decrease in GDP over 3 years. In a soft Brexit environment, it will result in about 3.4%. And at the end of the day, there are some very basic things. So for example, half of all international mail that comes to Ireland transits through the UK. A large part of our surface trade transits through the UK. And when we talk about industries, and I know the beef sector is one which the Irish public has had an interesting history with, the beef sector is essentially a sector orientated towards Britain. And that's going to be a big challenge for beef farmers into the future. And the Republican Party, as it's stated, is put on this earth for one reason and one reason only, and that is to cut taxes. And they've done that. And that's going to be a challenge now in the future for Ireland, because a lot of those changes are going to make the attractiveness of Ireland as an offshore tax hub less attractive. 10 firms make up 38% of our corporate tax. That's how thin the multinational base is, how important a small handful of companies are. When we look at it in terms of gross value added to the economy, this is from the latest IMF report, 1.5% of firms in Ireland make up a quarter of our employment and over half of the gross value added to the economy. We are moving it back into an era of full employment, which means there's going to be a lot of stresses and strains on the labor market with respect to wages. People are becoming scarce. Competent people are becoming scarce. And this is where our future is. Our future is not going to be British. Our future is going to be moving away from the rows of Britain and is going to go back to Europe, where we were before in the past. And for Ireland, it's going to be a very difficult decade getting used to the new European Union and getting used to a much more distant and possibly much more fraught relationship with the United Kingdom. Because it's not going to be a bilateral relationship, it's going to be an EU versus the United Kingdom relationship. But people want to be in Dublin. It is the economic centre of Ireland. So if you want somebody to move to Dublin, yes, you have to pay them more. If you want people to move out of Dublin, surprisingly, it's very difficult to shift them. Only 2% of people that got 600 points in their leaving cert are making over 100,000 euros a year in our survey. So despite the obsession, despite all the photographs in the Irish Times of people jumping up and down with 600 points, it is not the absolute key to wealth.
So two purposes for this presentation. First one is to provide you a deeper analysis about the findings. And the second one to, I would say, stimulate your thoughts and by sharing our thoughts about the future of work, management, and people. The first topic is about bringing people in. So in 2017, we asked them, did you increase the net head count? So basically, did you get new hires? So the data is not there, but about 70% yes. And then we ask about the planning for 2018. So the number goes larger, 85%. Which department do you want to grow? So as you can see, sales, marketing, ICT is the two largest departments will be growing, much higher than the rest. We also asked which department, which roles do you think the most difficult to grow? So ICT is the most difficult to grow. When we ask about the reasons moving, both employers and employees, grade on the first factor, the most important factors for moving is about liking of career development. Okay, and then the second factor is the higher pay. And in terms of compensation, so because it's a salary survey, we ask about the salary change. And so in 2017, 84% of companies in our study have increased the salary level. So 47% increased less than 3%, and 41% increased between 3 and 5%. And then 12% companies increased more than 5%. Then we ask about 2018. So do you expect increased salaries? So you see the number is even larger. So 89% of companies are going to increase the salary. Takeaway for us, economic change, salary is going to be increased. And so how do you invest and retain your right talent? Organizations do have effective HR practices. I think you would say a big relief, okay, we do have proper HR practices. And what you need to work on is actually need to build up a more strong HR systems. How do you translate, how do you deliver a very clear, consistent message to your employees? That's the key, through your line managers. Talent management is very important, but organizations have even more priorities. So look outside the box. What values can you bring to the table? Always think that key question.
But the UK is heading for a cliff. The hour is late, and their lamps are going out, and we will not see them relit in the UK's lifetime if they fall off the cliff, which is entirely possible. The only hope is that the European Union will do as it always does, which is do the minimum possible thing at the last possible moment. And that's how you can work with 27 groups. But that requires the UK to get a solid dose of common sense and to realise that every possible outcome they will achieve is significantly worse for them and for everybody else than the situation they have now. This is an act of grotesque self-harm and of unprecedented willful harm to major trading partners. We need to be opening up to countries such as Vietnam, Indonesia, India in particular. But China is going to be growing. Sub-Saharan Africa is the largest emergent pool of new middle class. There's enormous opportunities beyond our colleagues in China. We've convinced ourselves that high taxes are bad at any level. I think if 42 people own the same as 3.7 billion, Houston, we have a problem. And we in Ireland have to face up to the fact that as part of the global economic system, as a player in the global economic tax shell game, whether we are at fault or not, we're part of the game. Therefore, we have to be part of changing the rules. And pretending it's not our problem is not going to work. Who's growing the world? Well, a large proportion of it is China, but equally a large part of it, and an increasingly large portion over time, are other emerging countries. It's not predominantly the rich West. That stopped in its tracks in 2007, 2008. Back in the 80s, it was the West, the G7. Now, it's a combination much more balanced of the G7, China, and large emerging countries, the BRICS, perhaps without Russia as much as it should be. And if the robots can make the money for us and we can take the money off the robots, they don't have the vote yet, so let's do that. There are large amounts of jobs, however, that can't be got rid of, and most of those are jobs that involve human-to-human interaction or high-quality craft and skills. What they don't necessarily involve are cashiers or accountants. We're living at a time where there's never been more peace domestically, internationally. Never been less war, never been less extrajudicial killing at a global level.